Hi, and sorry for the cigarette. I smoke, I drink, I curse, and I shouldn't. Welcome to Chocolate Sunday Part 4. Um, Talking about inheritances again. Um, yeah, I just want to say briefly as an introduction that for me, laying to rest the past, whether it makes a difference or not, I think it makes a difference, but even if it doesn't, for me, it sets me free. So it's like, okay, this is what happened now. Let's live in the present and have a future. So I left off on the last DVD or video diary, Chocolate Sunday, talking about Charlie Haughey and how I appealed my planning permission. Um, he's an ex-Taoiseach Prime Minister of Ireland, and he built on some remote island somewhere, and he bypassed all the planning rules about you need to have a connection to the land in order to get planning permission in a rural area. So I just happened to have read that in the newspapers when I got my planning permission turned down in Crossdrum. And I appealed and said, look, if Charlie can build on this island, I can build in Crossdrum. And I had connections in Crossdrum. My family had been there 30 years. I think 1982, 1981, they moved to Oldcastle. Anyway, I successfully appealed it and I got my planning permission. And I designed a house myself. It was like a combination of a Spanish villa and an American. I don't know what that period of architecture in America is, but it's beautiful. It's where they, like wooden houses with patios and verandas, and uh, oh, I love it. Beautiful, beautiful architecture. So I drew and drew and drew, and I'm no drawer, but there was a fabulous engineer in Virginia. I can't remember his name, but he was so good, and he captured what I was saying, and he drew up plans, and he got them kind of signed off by an architect, and I applied for my planning permission on the 4 acres that my dad had given me, um, because he was giving the farm to my baby sister. So that was fine. So I drew up the plans, applied for planning permission, got rejected first time, appealed, got planning permission the second time, and that was great. And then applied for a mortgage, which is something I think when I was about 14, I said I'm never going to have a mortgage. It's just a millstone around your neck. I don't want to be tied down like that. I had this horror of being committed. So I always swore I wouldn't have a mortgage, and it's a bit stupid. I've missed so many great opportunities. Like I was living in Estepona in Spain, just Marbella, just down coast from Marbella, in 1982, and I could have bought a Spanish villa for 12 grand, and they're like ridiculous prices now, although the bubbles burst over there, but still. There've been a few times I helped a girl. There was this Irish couple came to stay with me in London. They just had my number from somebody else that said, "Oh, ring Angie, she might help you." So they came and lived with me for a while, and then I came across this dodgy mortgage broker who said, "Do you know anybody who wants a mortgage?" And I helped them get a mortgage on an apartment in Maida Vale, and in 6 months they made 10 grand. That was back in 19, I don't know, 81, something crazy. They made 10 grand and came back, opened a pizza house on Grafton Street or O'Connell Street or something, made a fortune. But I personally was afraid to commit to mortgages. So anyway, back in, I don't know, 96 or 7 or something like that, we got planning permission, and then we applied for a mortgage. And we were kind of Christians and a bit radical. And on the form it says, have you or your husband or have you or your spouse ever been bankrupt? And my ex-husband had been. He'd gone bankrupt for a silly 18,000 in England when his first marriage broke up. And so we answered yes on the form, which might have been naive because, 18 grand and they're never going to check it in England, blah, blah. Anyway, we answered yes and consequently got turned down for a mortgage. And again, naivety, because I wasn't experienced with mortgages, and my husband was like, my husband, I won't insult him because he's my kid's father, but neither of us figured out to think, okay, well, we got turned down with that mortgage broker, let's try another one or whatever. So we just were devastated. We got this 4 acres, we fenced it off, we got our planning permission, and we didn't get the mortgage. And we were living in Pollockhill at the moment, at the time, renting, you know, like only a couple of miles around the corner from the farm. And it just wasn't going well. It wasn't like, you know, it wasn't fitting the dreams of our kids running around with their cousins and, you know, all being a family compound on the land and being happy and everything. So for one reason or another, when we got turned down with a mortgage, we made it mean something, and we just down tools and moved away. We went to Dundalk. We moved to Dundalk to be close to a church and a Christian school down there. And you know, we just walked away, really. I think there's a scripture that says, it's something like, he who gives up family, friends and land and fields and so on for my name's sake will receive 100-fold in this lifetime with the bonus of eternal life. Anyway, for whatever reason, we justified it scripturally and all the rest of it, and we walked away. But you know, the planning permission just sat there, and planning permission lasts 5 years. So I think I thought to myself, well, sometime in that 5 years, somehow I'll be able to pull this one out of the bag. And in that 5 years that it took for the planning permission to, you know, almost run out of time, I actually left my husband. We moved to Dundalk and lived there a couple of years. And with hindsight, I think to myself, you know what? Maybe if we had got our mortgage and built our beautiful home on the family land and beside the farm, beside my parents, maybe I would have been so bought into the dream and the conformity that I might never have got the courage to leave my marriage. So, you know, it's almost okay. It's almost okay. But being away in Dundalk and kind of taking a step away from the family, which sometimes is healthy, I did get to a place of realizing, you know what, this marriage that I've stayed in for 9 years, trying to be a happy Christian, you know, happily married with children, it's not working. And I used to go and sit on a rock near the ocean or the sea, the radioactive sea near Dundalk. I used to go and sit there for an hour and a half every morning after I'd got the kids to school, and I just used to like pray and think and cry. And that was where I got the courage to say, I'm going to call it quits on my marriage, you know, even if nobody approves, and even if it's like, it looks like I'm selling myself down the river for everything I believed as a Christian. So when I decided to leave my marriage, my ex-husband went back to England, and he left behind him 100 grand of debt from the business that he'd set up in the boom. You know, we set up a building construction business because that was his trade. And really, if you couldn't have made it in the building trade in the boom in Ireland, you're never going to make it. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to confess that, but anyway, he managed to leave 100 grand of debt. And because my name was on the books of everything, I was like, you know, I used to do the VAT returns, and I used to do the hiring and firing of staff. And so he went back to England, and I didn't hear or see him for 8 months. And I was left with 4 horses, 3 kids, a dog, and 100 grand's worth of debt in joint names. And I phoned my parents. I think I wrote to them as well. And I just said, look, I'm messed up here. You know, it's like this marriage was not a good idea. And they never approved from the marriage right from the beginning. So I thought they'd be glad that I'd come to my senses. And I said, can we come back? I've got 3 kids, you know, and the dog and the 4 horses. Can we come back? Can we like live on a mobile home on the land and let me see if I can get my house built somehow, even if it's that the council will build me a house on my land, you know, can I come home? And I was amazed that my mother, who'd been so vehemently against this marriage, was horrified at the prospect of me leaving it. She just was like, you made your bed, you have to lie on it, and you know, you can't just make yourself a single parent and then expect us to pick up the pieces. And I was just really shocked. But I had made my mind up, regardless of whether my parents gave me a welcome or not. I had decided I had to get out of that marriage. So they turned down the idea of us living on a mobile home on the land. They turned down the idea of us getting the council to build our house, because my mum's thing was that, oh, it's just horrible. It was like, she had reservations like, oh, what if I just decided after 5 years to go back to England, and then the council would put ruffians into the house or something? The council would still own it or something. It was complicated, because if you get the council to build on your land, they own the land or something. There's some tie. And then my mother says, you know, oh, you'll just, you know, leave us to raise your kids, or you might keep a scruffy garden. It was all sorts of horrible stuff. So I rented a house in Newcastle, just outside of Oldcastle, and God was very good to me. It was like, you know, despite having 4 horses, 3 kids and a dog, I found the perfect place to rent, with stables, and there was land to rent over the road, and neighbours that I'd known years earlier. I didn't realise they were my neighbours then. But so when it came, I rented that beautiful place in Newcastle, and I was actually so happy, even with this 100 grand of debt, and like newly separated and rejected by my family to a degree that was agony, actually. But I still had this ecstasy, this feeling of like, you know what, I'm free. I left it. I was like a bird out of a cage. I don't care what gets thrown at me. I'm being true to myself. You know, which is a hard one to reconcile with big Christianity. You know, God hates divorce, and I know he does. But God, you know, he created divorce. He divorced Israel. You know, he divorced Israel. You know, that's not the point. But anyway, so having been there a year and a half, I then got offered a council house in Loughcrew View, a new housing estate in Oldcastle. And the 5 years still wasn't up on my planning permission. And so I kind of felt like I had to take the council house because of the security of tenure, and, you know, the fact that I could give my kids a home, you know, in the absence of any child support. Well, actually, I think my ex was paying child support because his father was organising it from England at that time. But I just felt it was my duty. I've got 3 kids. You know what? Much as I love the gypsy lifestyle, I owe it to my kids to have a secure home. So I accepted the council house gratefully. Sorry, the cigarette break. And not long afterwards, my father came round and said, what did you do with the plans of your house? And I said, oh, I still have them, you know. And he said, oh, would you let me get a look at them? And foolishly, I naively thought, you know what, my dad's going to build my house for me, and then as soon as it's built, I'll get a mortgage in my own name, if for no other reason than that, you know, the land was given to me, so there was no cost of a site, and the house is built, so therefore it's like, you know, it's going to be easy to get a mortgage at that stage. So I honestly thought, oh, isn't that lovely? Do you know what I mean? That they're helping me. So and then Dad also asked me and I should have had the courage to say, you know, where are you coming from? What's your agenda? You know, why are you out? Because he also asked me things like, how much did it cost you and your ex to fence the land? And how much did the architect designs cost and so on? And all I could naively think was, okay, Dad's going to help me. You know, how lovely is that? But in